Barack Obama has finally spoken publicly about a controversial video shared online that quickly sparked nationwide discussion, and his response wasn't what many people expected. The video itself was removed soon after it appeared, but the conversation around it didn't disappear. Instead, it raised deeper questions about political communication, digital responsibility, and how public figures respond when unexpected moments unfold in front of millions. And what makes this story even more interesting is not just the video, but what happened after it was taken down. Because Obama's reaction wasn't focused on outrage, it was focused on something else entirely, something that reveals how modern leadership is changing in the age of social media. To understand why this moment captured so much attention, you first need to understand how fast everything happened. In early February, former U.S. President Donald Trump shared a video on his social media platform, Truth Social. The video was part of a longer political meme-style compilation that referenced ongoing political debates and public narratives. But toward the end of the clip, there was a segment that viewers quickly began discussing across multiple platforms. Within hours, reactions began spreading. Some people expressed confusion. Others questioned how the video had been shared in the first place. And many were waiting for one specific person to respond, Barack Obama. But days passed, and Obama said nothing publicly. No immediate statement, no rapid response, just silence. And that silence, in itself, became part of the story. Because in today's digital world, silence from a major public figure often raises more curiosity than any immediate reaction ever could. So why did he wait? And when he finally spoke, what he chose to say revealed far more than people expected. The turning point came during an interview released on February 14th, when Obama addressed the broader issue of public discourse and online behavior. He did not focus on individuals directly. Instead, he spoke about something larger. He described certain trends in modern communication as deeply troubling, emphasizing how easily online content can shift public attention and shape conversations. But here's what stood out the most. He didn't frame his response around anger, he framed it around perspective. Obama explained that while social media moments can dominate headlines, his experiences traveling and speaking with people across the country showed him something different, that many individuals still value respect, civility, and meaningful dialogue. That contrast between online noise and real-world conversations became the core of his message. And it revealed something important about how public figures are adapting to the digital era. Because responding to controversy today isn't just about reacting. It's about choosing how to react and when. But that raises an even bigger question. How did the video appear in the first place? According to statements released afterward, the post was reportedly shared by a staff member and later removed once concerns were raised. Officials stated that the post did not remain online permanently and was taken down after internal review. However, by that point, screenshots and discussions had already spread across social media, and that highlights one of the most defining realities of modern communication. Even temporary posts can create permanent conversations, because once something is seen, shared, or discussed online, its impact continues far beyond its original upload. And this is where Obama's response becomes even more significant, because instead of focusing on the post itself, he focused on the environment that allows moments like this to gain so much attention so quickly. He spoke about the importance of maintaining standards of conduct, especially in positions of public visibility, not as a personal defense, but as a reflection on leadership. This approach surprised many observers because in highly visible situations, strong emotional reactions often dominate headlines. But Obama's tone was calm, measured, deliberate, and that wasn't accidental. It reflected a communication strategy that prioritizes long-term credibility over short-term reaction, a strategy that has defined much of his public presence since leaving office. But there's another layer to this story that most people missed entirely, because while the video itself sparked immediate attention, the bigger impact came from what it revealed about the modern media ecosystem. Today, information moves faster than ever before. A single post can reach millions within minutes, but context often arrives much slower, and that delay creates a gap filled with speculation, assumptions, and emotional reactions. Public figures must navigate that gap carefully, Because every response, or lack of response, becomes part of the narrative. And Obama understood that. He waited, he observed, and when he spoke, he chose to address the bigger picture rather than the specific moment. Which raises an important question. Was this simply a response to one video, or was it a message about something much larger? Because in his interview, Obama emphasized something that many viewers didn't expect. He spoke about resilience, he spoke about community, and he spoke about the importance of not allowing digital distractions to overshadow deeper values. He explained that while online platforms amplify certain voices, they do not always represent the full reality of public sentiment. And that distinction matters, because it changes how leaders engage with modern audiences. It changes how influence works, and it changes how stories evolve over time. But the story didn't end with his interview, because as soon as his comments were released, reactions began all over again. Some people praised his measured tone, others debated the broader implications, and many began asking a different question entirely. What does this moment reveal about the future of political communication? Because one thing is clear. This wasn't just about a single post. It was about how leadership, media, and public perception intersect in the digital age. And the answer may shape how similar moments unfold in the future. What makes this situation even more fascinating isn't just the video, or even Obama's response. It's what happened behind the scenes afterward. Because according to publicly available statements, when reporters asked whether the person responsible for sharing the post had faced any consequences, the answer wasn't as definitive as many expected. There was no immediate announcement of disciplinary action, no detailed explanation of internal decisions, just a brief acknowledgement that the post had been removed, and that ambiguity left room for interpretation, not necessarily about blame, but about accountability in the digital era. Because today, public figures are no longer the only ones shaping their public image. Staff members, social media managers, communications teams, all of them play a role in what the public sees. And sometimes a single click can create a ripple effect that reaches millions. But here's where the story takes a deeper turn. Because Obama didn't just address the video itself, he addressed something much broader: the culture surrounding modern communication. During his interview, Obama spoke about how public discourse has changed dramatically over the past decade. He reflected on how digital platforms have created new opportunities for connection, but also new challenges for maintaining respectful and productive dialogue. He emphasized that attention has become one of the most valuable currencies in the modern world, and that reality changes how information spreads, because content that sparks emotional reactions often travels faster than content that encourages thoughtful reflection. That doesn't mean it defines society as a whole, but it does shape what people see first, and that distinction matters. Because visibility and reality are not always the same thing, and this is where Obama's message became more philosophical than political. He suggested that while online moments can feel overwhelming, they don't necessarily represent the majority of people's values or beliefs. He described meeting individuals across different communities who still prioritize kindness, respect, and understanding. And that perspective reframes the entire situation, because instead of viewing the moment as a defining crisis, he framed it as a reminder of how easily attention can be redirected, and how important it is to stay focused on long-term principles rather than short-term distractions. But this raises another important question. Why do moments like this gain so much traction in the first place? The answer lies in how modern platforms are designed. Social media algorithms prioritize engagement, not necessarily accuracy, not necessarily context, but engagement, which means content that generates strong reactions. UE, whether positive, negative, or confusing, is more likely to be seen by larger audiences. This isn't unique to politics. It applies to entertainment, news, sports, every area of public life. And once something reaches a certain level of visibility, it becomes part of a much larger conversation, often far beyond its original intent. That's exactly what happened here. Because even after the video was removed, the discussion continued, not about the video itself, but about what it represented. For Obama, this wasn't unfamiliar territory. Throughout his career, he has faced intense public scrutiny, moments where every word, every action, Every silence was analyzed. But what makes this moment different is the speed at which narratives now form. Years ago, public reactions unfolded over days or weeks. Today, they unfold in minutes, and that compresses decision-making timelines dramatically. Public figures must choose quickly whether to respond immediately or wait, and both choices carry consequences. Respond too quickly, and you risk escalating the situation. Wait too long, and your silence becomes part of the narrative. Obama chose a third option. He responded, but on his own timeline, and in his own way, not reacting to the moment, but reflecting on what the moment represents. This approach reflects something communication experts often discuss but rarely explain publicly. It's called narrative framing. Instead of allowing an event to define the conversation, the individual reframes the conversation itself. And that's exactly what Obama did. He shifted the focus away from the video and toward the larger issue of how society communicates in the digital age. That shift changed the tone of the discussion entirely, because it moved the conversation from reaction to reflection, and reflection lasts longer than reaction. But there's another element to this story that many viewers overlooked. Obama also spoke about optimism, not blind optimism, but realistic optimism. He acknowledged that moments of controversy can feel discouraging, but he emphasized that they don't erase the progress that has been made over time. He pointed to the importance of community engagement, dialogue, and participation in shaping the future. And that message resonated with many people because it offered perspective rather than polarization. It offered stability in a moment defined by rapid change. And perhaps most importantly, it offered calm. Meanwhile, public discussion continued across news outlets, online forums, and political commentary platforms. Some analysts focused on the technical aspects, how the video was shared and removed. Others focused on the communication strategies involved, but many focused on something else entirely: the symbolism of the moment. Because moments like this are rarely remembered for their technical details. They're remembered for what they reveal about leadership, about communication, and about how individuals choose to respond under pressure. And Obama's response revealed something very specific. It revealed restraint, it revealed intention, and it revealed an understanding of how modern attention cycles work. But this also connects to a larger shift happening right now. A shift in how influence operates in the digital age. Because influence is no longer defined solely by who speaks first. It's often defined by who speaks last, or who speaks most thoughtfully. And in this case, Obama's delayed, measured response allowed him to address not just the moment, but the meaning behind it. And that meaning extends far beyond a single video. It speaks to the future of public dialogue itself. Because here's the reality most people don't realize. Moments like this aren't isolated. They're part of a larger transformation. A transformation in how public figures interact with audiences, how audiences interpret information, and how narratives evolve over time. And understanding that transformation may be the key to understanding what happens next. To fully understand why this moment mattered, you have to look beyond politics entirely. Because at its core, this wasn't just a political story. It was a communication story. A story about how leaders respond when attention suddenly shifts toward them in unpredictable ways. And more importantly, how those responses influence what happens next. Because every public response creates a signal not just to supporters or critics, but to everyone watching. And in Obama's case, the signal was clear. He wasn't trying to amplify the moment. He was trying to contextualize it. That distinction may seem subtle, but it changes everything, because amplification fuels attention. Context shapes understanding, and understanding lasts longer. What's especially important is how this reflects a broader shift happening across all levels of public life. Not just in government, but in business, entertainment, sports, everywhere. Public figures today operate in an environment where visibility is constant, where every post, every statement, every reaction becomes part of a permanent digital record. And that creates a new kind of pressure, not just to respond, but to respond wisely, because once something is said publicly, it becomes part of the story forever. And that permanence changes how experienced leaders approach moments of controversy. They think not just about the present, but about the future, about how their response will be viewed months or even years later. This is why Obama's words focus less on the video itself and more on the values he believes should guide public discourse. He spoke about the importance of decency, about maintaining perspective, about recognizing that while online moments can feel overwhelming, they do not define the entirety of society. And that message carries weight because it shifts focus away from division and toward responsibility. Not responsibility assigned to one person or one moment, but shared responsibility across everyone who participates in public conversations. Because in the digital age, everyone plays a role. Not just those who create content, but those who share it, discuss it, amplify it, or choose not to. And this leads to one of the most important questions raised by this entire situation. What kind of communication will define the future? Will it be driven primarily by speed, or by intention, by reaction, or by reflection? Because those choices will shape not just political conversations, but all public conversations moving forward, and leaders who understand that distinction are already adapting their approach. They are choosing timing more carefully, choosing language more deliberately, choosing when to speak and when silence may be more powerful. Obama's response reflects that evolution. It reflects an understanding that attention is temporary, but reputation is long-term. That individual moments fade, but patterns of behavior remain, and that ultimately how someone responds to a moment often matters more than the moment itself, because responses reveal priorities, they reveal mindset, they reveal leadership style. And in this case, the response emphasized stability over escalation, perspective over reaction, and long-term credibility over short-term attention. But there's another layer to this story that extends even further, because this moment also reveals something about audiences, about how people interpret information, about how curiosity works, about how attention moves, because the initial video created one wave of attention. Obama's silence created another, and his eventual response created a third. Each phase reshaped the narrative. Each phase shifted the conversation. And that pattern demonstrates how modern stories evolve in real time, not in a straight line, but in waves, waves of attention, waves of interpretation, waves of understanding, and perhaps most importantly, this moment highlights something many people overlook. Attention doesn't just follow events, it follows meaning. People aren't just interested in what happened, they're interested in what it represents, what it reveals, what it tells them about the future. And Obama's response provided that meaning, not through confrontation, but through context, not through escalation, but through perspective. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a video. It became a story about response, about timing, about leadership in a world where attention moves faster than ever before. And it showed how one moment, handled carefully, can shift an entire conversation. Because in today's digital landscape, the most powerful response isn't always the fastest one. It's the one that brings clarity, the one that brings perspective, the one that reminds people to look beyond the noise and focus on what truly matters. But this moment also raises a bigger question. As communication continues to evolve, which voices will shape the future? And how will they choose to use that influence? Because what happens next may not be defined by the moments that spark attention, but by the responses that give those moments meaning.